Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts, Tom Vasel and Sam Healey.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia, hello.
Sam Healey, what's up, my old friend Cthulhu?
Today we're taking a look at Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. This is one of those games that when I saw the announcement somewhere, I thought it was a joke.
Think of little Cthulhu droplets everywhere. Rain of Cthulhu.
Yes.
Like the thunderstorm of Cthulhu.
Yes.
Which is possible. But again, I thought it was kind of a joke, mashup. But the Cthulhu license is very popular right now. Pandemic is slightly popular. So, hey, peanut butter and chocolate, mix them together. But does it a good game make? Well, let's see how it's played, and then we'll tell you. So the board has 4 different towns that are placed together. We have Arkham, Innsmouth, Kingsport, and Dunwich, the 4 towns that show up in these sorts of Cthulhu type of games. And you're going to randomly seed the board with cultists, drawing cards and placing 3 cultists, 2 cultists, and even here, Shoggoth. These are gigantic creatures. And your goal is to stop these creatures from getting all over the board, and basically to stop Cthulhu. You're going to have some random cards placed here. Cthulhu is the last card. If Cthulhu is ever revealed, then everyone loses. This Shoggoth here, if there's 3 on the board and we need to add another one, then everyone loses. If we need to draw the last card from this deck and we can't, then everyone loses. If we need to place these guys on the board and we've run out of the cultists to put on the board, then everyone loses. Each player starts with 4 sanity. And over the course of the game, players may lose sanity due to different things. And if all the players go insane, lose their sanity, then everyone loses. So how do you win? Well, there are 4 gates in the board. There's one here at the hospital, one here at the graveyard, one at the old mill, and one here in the park. Players need to close each of those 4 gates. So at the beginning of the game, players are going to each pick a character. So there's a reporter, the detective, magician, driver, hunter, occultist, and doctor. Each of these guys has one special ability. So for example, this reporter here, when she takes the bus, she can do something special. She can go from bus station to bus station. They each have a certain number of actions on each turn. The doctor's special ability is that he has 5 actions. When a player goes insane, they lose their last sanity token. They'll flip over, and it will usually decrease their special abilities, and they are usually down 1 action. Now, you players can gain their sanity back if they close a gate. So that's one way they can become sane again. So what players are going to do on their turn is they're going to take actions, and they have a list of actions. Each player has a card that tells them the different actions that they can take on their turn. For example, one action might be going from one spot to another. Everyone comes in here on the train station, so they can go from one location to another location, and you'll notice the board does not wrap, but they can move around from location to location. They can take a bus. If they're at a bus station, for example, the diner has a bus station, the factory has a bus station, they can discard a clue card. Players will have some clue cards, so they can discard a clue card to go to any location in that town. So if I play a Kingsport card from the factory, I can go to any of the red locations in Kingsport. If I'm in Kingsport and I play this card at the market location, then I can go to any spot on the table. You can also go from one gate to another gate. You can just move through a gate. The problem is, when you move through a gate, you're going to have to roll the sanity die. Now, the sanity die is the main way players are going to lose their sanity. Whenever you roll the die, you're going to look at the result. Now, hopefully you'll get a blank. But usually you'll lose 1 sanity, perhaps 2, or maybe 2 cultists will show up in your location. So there's 2 blank sides, but there's also 2 sides with the losing a sanity and 1 with a 2 sanity. So this is the main way players lose sanity, but sometimes moving through the gates is the most efficient way to go around the board. You can also give a clue card to somebody else. If you're in Kingsport and someone else is in Kingsport, I can give them a Kingsport card. You can defeat a cultist. If you're in a spot where there's cultists, each action you spend gets rid of a cultist. So that's a good way to keep them down and from expanding on the board. You can defeat a Shoggoth. These guys are big, so they take 3 of your actions to defeat, and you can get rid of them. The good news is when you defeat them, you will get a relic card. There are many different relic cards in the game. So, half of them will start in the deck at the beginning of the game, and you can draw them. The other half are in a relic pile, and players can draw these. Relic cards are great because they give you special abilities. Skip the next summoning step. You can swap one clue from your hand with a clue card in someone else's hand. You can choose a revealed old one. That's one of these cards up here, and cancel its effect. The active player can instantly move to any location on the board. These are great, but every time you play one of these, with a few exceptions, like this one here, this one says no sanity roll required. But for the most part, when you play one of these cards, you also have to roll the die because you're using an ancient relic. So there's a chance that you will go insane. And then sealing a gate, that's really important. To seal a gate, you will need 5 clue cards of the same color. So to seal the red gate, I'll need 5 Kingsport cards. Now when you seal a gate, let's say I seal the yellow gate here at the old mill, I'll place the seal here over that gate. Investigators can no longer move from that gate to any other gate. You also lose 1 cultist at every yellow location. Okay, so that's basically it. You seal the 4th gate and you win, but there's some negative things. Now, I want to talk quickly about the special abilities. The reporter can go from bus station to bus station, so that's very convenient. The detective only needs 4 cards of the same color to seal a gate. This guy here gets a relic and has a hand limit of 8. Most people have a hand limit of 7, and he can give or take relic cards from other players. This driver, when he walks, he can move 2 spaces instead of 1 and ignores one of the bad cards' effect he can ignore that. Here, when she defeats a cultist at a location, she kills them all instead of 1, and she can defeat a Shoggoth for 1 action. Here, she can move a cultist up to 2 locations, or for 2 actions, move a Shoggoth 1 location. And the doctor gets 5 actions. Now, at the end of a player's turn, they're going to draw 2 cards from the deck and keep them. You have a hand limit of 7. But in the deck, there's going to be evil stirs. Evil stirs are negative cards. Whoever draws the evil stirs will have to roll the sanity die. They'll reveal the next old one. So you'll reveal one of these old ones that says basically all players collectively lose 3, 4, 5 sanity tokens, depending on how many players are in the game. Or this one here says playing relic cards can only be done by the active player. Or this one here, place 1 cultist on each gate location. Now, as these cards come out, they're going to have abilities that are negative, sometimes that stay in the game, but also it's going to affect how many cultists will come out each turn. That when evil stirs, also a Shoggoth shows up, and then we will shuffle this summoning pile here, these cards, put them on top, and then draw. Now, at the end of each player's turn, after they draw the 2 cards from the deck, they have to draw from the summoning deck here, and so 2 of these cards are turned over. The number that's here, eventually it will turn into 3, and you're going to place a cultist in each one. Also, if you draw a card with this symbol, each Shoggoth that's on the board is going to move towards the closest open gate. If they go into the gate, they come off the board. Yay, that's good. Not that good, actually, though, because they turn over the next card up here. And if this last card is turned over, players will lose the game. So players are going to keep playing until they either close all 4 gates or until one of the negative things happens. Cthulhu shows up, too many cultists on the board, etc., and then everyone collectively loses. Okay, so I guess the first thing is, how do you feel this compares to Pandemic? Because that's a legitimate question. A lot of people who are watching our videos have played Pandemic, and they're going to say, should I own both? If I like Pandemic, will I like this? If I don't like Pandemic, will I like this, etc.?
I think the big question there is it a straight reskin? And I think actually the answer to that is not as clear-cut as it might seem, because different people are going to feel differently about that. They're going to feel, oh, this is too close to Pandemic already. I do not need this. And some people will feel that it is different enough that it warrants exploration or purchase. I myself found it to be different enough, not only thematically, of course, but the mechanisms in the game, that I think it stands on its own, and it stands on its own very well. I like what the game does, you know.
But?
Let me say, in my opinion, one more time.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's your love of Pandemic talking, because when I was playing this game, I felt like I was playing Cthulhu Pandemic.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything really new that was going on.
Okay.
I mean, all of the same characters had pretty much the same abilities. You're moving from one spot to the other to cleanse cultists instead of little virus cubes. You're closing this gate when that's really just curing the virus, and you're doing these things in all of the same ways. So I think, in my opinion, with a few minor exceptions, this is nothing but a reskin of Pandemic.
Okay, well, I'm kind of halfway in between. I think that it is a reskinning of Pandemic, but I think there's a lot of changes. The map is very different, okay? It doesn't wrap around. It's a much smaller, tighter map. There's those gates that you can warp back and forth. I think adding the Madness die is certainly a change. The Cthulhu, old one cards, whatever they are, Elder Gods up at the top, that changes the game. And then having those Shoggoths moving around the board, that feels different too. Yeah. At the same time, if you know how to play Pandemic, this is really easy to teach. You know, hey, Pandemic, here's the changes. And I could get someone who knows Pandemic up pretty quickly. And even with some of the characters, the Hunter, I'm like, hey, this Hunter, also known as Medic. Although there are some of the characters that are different. And I do like that. Not every character, I mean, you have the Medic, the Scientist, the... it was one of the other ones from the original game. But several of them are also new. Like the guy who can go 2 spaces, the car driver. That's a new character.
True.
But you had mentioned that you thought this was a tighter, smaller game.
It feels like a slider game, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a dig at the game, but it's sort of like when Pandemic, the Cure, the dice game came out, it was like, oh, this is like Speedy Pandemic. A little luckier, but a little faster. This one feels like a Pandemic light, a little bit of a game. But yes, I do like the changes. And while you're right that there's clearly a basis there off Pandemic, I think the changes are enough that that I could see myself, depending on the mood I'm in, playing Pandemic or playing this. I won't always be in the mood to play either one, you know what I mean? They're not interchangeable for me. I like the movement on the board really does feel different. The Elder Gods showing up at the top, and just those powers feel differently. Now, if you play Pandemic and you play it with the first expansion, I think is the one that added like epidemics that had built-in powers, that's a little bit like the Elder Gods. But if you've only ever played basic Pandemic, then this has got a different feel, I think.
Now the components are very different. Okay, you have plastic figures for your investigators. The little cultists are little plastic dudes. The Shoggoths are plastic. The die is pretty cool. The artwork is good. For me, major props on the Cthulhu theme. They did a good job bringing it in, and it ain't cutesy Cthulhu either. It ain't like, hey, I'm Cthulhu. No, this is Cthulhu. You're like, oh, shut the door. Oh, too late. Type situation.
Yeah, that's one of the things where this game really kind of shone over Pandemic for me, because it didn't have just the pawns as the people, the survivors or what have you, and you don't have just cubes. You have actual miniatures, and these are pretty good miniatures at that. So that's one place where I think this game totally blows away Pandemic as far as component quality is concerned. Artwork, too. Artwork is phenomenal. The board is very evocative and thematic, and everything else that comes in the game as far as graphic design is concerned blows Pandemic out of the water. But at the same time, if you're adversely affected by this particular theme, all that's going to be wasted on you.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a give and take. If you're not one that enjoys this Cthulhu skin that's been wrapped around Pandemic, stay away from the game. It's not going to be for you. But if that's Lovecraftian mythos, if that's something that you really enjoy and you're really interested in, this is kind of a no-brainer for you. Especially,
right. It's almost like not worth mentioning that if you like Cthulhu, Pandemic, you should get this.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. But if you like Pandemic and Cthulhu, this is a no-brainer.
Well, yes.
I mean, but again, if you don't like one or the other, I don't think the theme or the game is going to win you over.
I think the question at the end of the day that people will not be able to discern on their own from looking at this or knowing what it's about is, if I own Pandemic and I like what this does, if I own Pandemic, do I need this? I think Sam's saying no.
I don't
I'm
think
saying
you
yes.
Do. But if the theme is, if you already own Pandemic and the theme is something you like, yes, you probably want to get it, because you'll use this with your Lovecraftian friends, and you'll use Pandemic with your non-gamer friends.
Okay.
I also think, though, that this game may correspond to some people like Catan and Catan Germany responds to you. Okay? You really like Settlers of Catan Germany.
I do.
A lot. And it's a fixed board. It's similar to Catan, but there are some changes, right? They're very similar, but there's changes, and you like those changes.
Right.
And I think for some people, Pandemic, they like it, it's okay, they'll play this and they'll be like, oh, I really like this. I really like rolling the madness die. I really like the
It was
going
a vanilla
insane.
experience with the regular, and this makes it your favorite flavor of ice cream.
Yes, and I can see that happening for a lot of people. Now, not for me. I'm I like Cthulhu stuff. Oh, well and good. I enjoyed this. I like it a lot, but I would be hesitant to have this and Pandemic both in my collection.
Sure.
And if I was picking one, I would probably lean towards the original Pandemic, if only because like my wife would enjoy that Pandemic more.
Right.
She likes the whole save the world aspect over Cthulhu. And so I might have more, and also it has expansions, right? So I like that exists. But that is a thing.
Yeah.
This is a variant, which is a cool variant. I will give this one investigated thumb up with a magnifying glass in it. I do like the theme. I think that it's well produced. And if you like Cthulhu and Pandemic, then it's like 65 thumbs up. I mean, you're going to just get it anyway.
Wow. 65 thumbs.
What about you?
That's a weird picture. Well, I mean, I enjoy Pandemic. I'll give it the same rating that I would give a Pandemic. And, I can't remember what I've rated Pandemic. So I'm going to say it's around a 7, which would probably make it one Cthulhu tentacle up.
Oh, the tentacles are making noise now.
Yes, now they are. Well, it's the mouth behind the tentacle. You can't actually see the mouth.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'll give it one thumb up because it is a good game. I'm just not so hot on the theme. I think this is Cthulhu is going the way of the dodo. And what I mean by that, it's not dying off. It's just becoming too common.
Slumbering.
Everybody's doing it now. So, I mean, everywhere you turn, there's Cthulhu,
Right.
And so it's just getting kind
I
of...
changed my thumbs to 1.5, just so I'm a little higher than Sam.
Trading in the Mediterranean, it's getting that way, for me, at least. So, there you have it.
Obviously, I like Pandemic a lot. I like Cthulhu a lot. I'm not over it. I don't think it's saturated. I like it. So, I'm going to give it 2 Shoguts up.
That wasn't
Worst thumb rating system ever!
forced or deliberated at all.
I really, really like it. So obviously I rate it higher than both of these guys. I
Well,
thoroughly...
then you may have it. That's Pandemic Reign of the Cthulhu. I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia!
Sam Healey. See you on the flip side.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.